Today we talk about valve drop. Plop. So basically what we want to do is measure mechanically how much space or minimum distance we have between the valve and the piston. Yeah? Because we need to know the clearance, otherwise we can run into shit by blowing up the engine. I know this from my own business. I did it already, so you don't have to do it also. You will break the engine if you don't know how much distance you have. Especially, this is 1.8T Mark IV engine, and we changed a lot of stuff. We changed the stroke to 2 liter, we have special pistons, we have pockets in the pistons, we have race camshafts. This is the main reason why we do this valve drop measurement. And we have also bigger valves. So the diameter of the valve is bigger, so also here we need to check if everything is clear and not touching. As you can see on the 1.82 we have this special pocket here. That's the same because the engine is on TDC, top deck center now. I fitted only 4 studs just for the head, because next step we will put the head on and then we will measure. One thing also, if you see each piston, normally each piston has pockets, valve pockets, so the valve can clear this area here, it's not touching, and they are always on the intake from the engine, of course. Yeah, the intake valves, the pockets are always for the intake. Sometimes we have also pockets for the exhaust, but mainly always on the intake side. They are the most important, and that's the first question to you: why? Why are they on the intake and not on the exhaust? That's the first question to you. So I have prepared the head here. We have 2 valves installed, one exhaust valve and one intake. As you see, they are free. We have only the stem seals installed, so they don't fall out when we turn the head. Usually I recommend to measure the first and the fourth cylinder, same as you do the compression ratio calculation. Yeah, the first and the last, because normally it would be, of course, be best to make all cylinders, to check all of them. But if we check the first and the fourth and they are nearly the same, for me it's okay. Yeah, because it can be that the head is skimmed wrong. That's like this or like that, so it's not correct skimmed, or the block is not correct skimmed. So if we check the first and the last, we are safe. Just for some explanation here on the table. That's, for example, one valve which is opening the exhaust. We have the maximum lift, for example, here, like 11 millimeter, for example. Then when the valve closes again here, and the intake opens here, maximum lift, and closes here. And this point we have top deck center, so the piston is in the top, TDC, and the inlet valve and the exhaust valve are opened a bit. Yeah? So it's always, the main rule is intake opens and exhaust is closing. That's this TDC. Yeah? Intake starts to open and exhaust is closing. So at this point we have both valves open, yeah? And we will measure this value now with the head. So we take the head. I always need to check this is cylinder number 1, because I know here's the thread for the tensioner. So we take the head like this. I do this without head gasket, yeah, because I don't want to tighten it completely. But of course you need to be very careful that everything is clean without any debris on chips. Otherwise you will damage the surfaces. So. Also, one thing which is important on those heads to know. Warte mal, wir sind gar nicht richtig drauf. So, jetzt. Is this point here. Maybe with some light. You can see there is already a damage, because it's very thin at this area. Mainly this happens if you try to remove the head bolt or nut. Then you start to bend this area, and it's very dangerous, because in this area the camshaft is the camshaft bearing. So try to look at this point and try to bend it back or remove it with a grinder, as you see. Otherwise you can damage the engine very quick. That's a very important hint for the 1.8T head assembly. Free of charge. So now I have my special plate. There's a bit of a heavy metal plate with some gaffer tape. So I put this on the head. Then I have a special gauge. It's a gauge which is it has enough room to measure. I don't know how we call this in English, but the range is very high because you need a high range for measurement like this. So now we put it on top of the valve. And first of all, I drop the valve now. So now it's a valve drop. I put the valve down on the piston. So now it's solid, sitting on the piston. Okay, then I put the gauge on top. Okay. So then we put on 0. Where's my plier? Yeah. I have a plier, snap-on plier, but I put some, how we call it, Schrumpfschlauch in German. You know Schrumpfschlauch? Schrumpfschlauch. I think it sounds very funny for English people, Schrumpfschlauch. It's, or you can take also any kind of tape. I just want to avoid to damage the valve when I push it up, you know. So we put the gauge on 0. Now we put it there, and I take the valve and I push it up. So now we have 3.5. So 3.5 millimeter. We can double check, put it, chop. Yeah, it's more or less. I think it's 3.4. So then I write this value down. So I know we have now X valve number 8. Was it 8? It was number 1. Oh, shit. Fehler im deutschen Video. X1, we have 3.4 millimeter. So that's the distance. That's the mechanical value we measured. We dropped the valve on the piston. So then I know, because now we have to calculate the head gasket as well. I know I did a calculation and the compression ratio calculation. And I know we need a gasket 2 millimeter. Normally there are 1 millimeter, but on this engine we need 2 because we go higher in power. We need to drop the compression ratio. So we have a head gasket 2 millimeter. So we add this to this distance, 2.0. So we have a clearance of 5.4 millimeter. But then also, as I explained on the table, the intake is open and the exhaust is open as well. The valves are open at TDC. So this value you need to get from the camshaft manufacturer, yeah, from the fabricator for the camshaft. They will tell you, for example, it's 2 millimeter. Yeah? Although we know it's 2 millimeter open. Yeah? So we have to remove this from our distance again. So it was here 2, now it's here 2 as well. So we have 3.4 mil. So 3.4 mil is the distance which we have. For my opinion, if you have at least 2 millimeter, you are on the safe side. But I know on the intake side, now we have to measure the intake, of course, but I did it already. It's just for explanation now here. So, but the main problem is on the intake side. Yeah, this is why we have also the pockets. This is part of the explanation. And I think on this engine we measured something about 2 millimeters at TDC, which is more or less correct. But this is the next question to you. The most critical point where it can touch the piston to the valve is not at TDC. It's not at TDC. So there is another point. And maybe you know. If you know, write it in the comment. Anyway, you need to clarify with the camshaft fabricator how much clearance you need to have just to be on the safe side and not to destroy your engine by the first start. Because there is also another thing, which is this one here. the VVT, variable valve time changer, or how you call this. It sits inside here. That is magnetic valve, and it can be controlled by the ECU. Here's the chain, and it will expand or go inside. And by this, we change the cam timing, or the ECU will change the cam timing to have a better torque development in lower RPM. Yeah. So this thing also is very important to keep in mind in the calculation. You know, so because this can also break the engine. Be careful, as usual. Engine is very important, and engines are part of my life, maybe also of your life. So please be patient, measure everything, and pedal to the metal. Pedal to the metal. Bye bye. Gut.